Choose to be optimistic. It feels better, a spiritual exploration of inner orientation, conscious perception, and the sacred discipline of hope. At first glance, the phrase choose to be optimistic, it feels better may seem simplistic, perhaps even naive, in a world filled with uncertainty, conflict, loss, and change. To the logical mind, optimism can appear like a denial of reality, a refusal to see things as they are. But from a spiritual perspective, optimism is not about denying reality, it is about choosing which level of reality you will live from. There is the outer reality of events, circumstances, and conditions, and then there is the inner reality of perception, interpretation, and meaning. Spirituality teaches that while we may not always control what happens outside of us, we do have profound influence over how we relate to what happens. The invitation to choose to be optimistic is not a demand that you pretend everything is fine. Rather, it is a call to align your inner world with trust instead of fear, with openness instead of resistance, and with possibility instead of limitation. To choose optimism is to exercise one of the most sacred spiritual freedoms we possess, the freedom to orient our consciousness. Optimism is often misunderstood as a personality trait, something you either have or don't have. But spiritually speaking, optimism is not temperament. It is intention. It is the conscious decision to lean toward light rather than darkness, to interpret life through the lens of growth rather than defeat. Every moment presents us with interpretive choices. We can see an obstacle or an opportunity, a delay or a divine redirection, a failure or a lesson, a loss or a liberation. Two people may walk through the same experience and emerge with completely different realities, not because the experience itself was different, but because their inner interpretations were different. Spirituality suggests that our interpretations are not passive reactions but creative acts. In choosing how we see, we participate in shaping what we become. Optimism, then, is not about predicting a positive outcome. It is about cultivating a receptive state of being. It says, even if I do not understand this moment, I trust that meaning can emerge from it. And that trust changes everything. There is a reason optimism feels better. It is not just emotionally pleasant. It is spiritually congruent. When we adopt pessimism as our default stance, we often contract inwardly. Our thoughts narrow. Our bodies tense. Our energy becomes defensive and guarded. Fear begins to dominate our perception, filtering out signs of support, connection, or growth. In this contracted state, we are less available to life, less creative, less compassionate, and less open to guidance. Optimism, by contrast, expands us. It softens our resistance and increases our willingness to engage. It allows us to meet life with curiosity rather than dread. Spiritually, this expansion reflects our deeper nature, the part of us that is inherently oriented toward growth, healing, and connection. To feel better through optimism is not escapism. It is realignment. It is a return to the spacious awareness that exists beneath the noise of anxiety and doubt. This awareness recognizes that while pain may be inevitable, suffering often arises from how tightly we cling to fearful narratives about what pain means. Optimism loosens that grip. Spiritually, expectation is not neutral. What we anticipate subtly shapes how we act, what we notice, and what we allow ourselves to receive. If we expect rejection, we may withdraw prematurely. If we expect failure, we may hesitate to try. If we expect disappointment, we may miss moments of joy that quietly present themselves. In this way, pessimism can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, not through mystical punishment, but through the simple mechanics of attention and behavior. When our inner world is filled with bleak assumptions, our outer actions often reflect caution or avoidance, reinforcing the very outcomes we fear. Optimism interrupts this cycle. It invites us to show up differently, to take one more step, to extend one more effort, to believe that our actions matter. Spiritually, optimism affirms that life is participatory. We are not merely spectators watching events unfold, we are co-creators interacting with them. And the energy we bring into each moment influences what becomes possible. At its deepest level, optimism is an expression of faith, not necessarily faith in a specific outcome, but faith in the unfolding of life itself. It is the quiet conviction that even when things fall apart, something meaningful can eventually arise, that even in endings, beginnings are concealed. Faith does not guarantee comfort. It offers continuity. It reassures us that this moment is not the final chapter, that what feels like a detour may ultimately be a new path. When we choose optimism, we are choosing to trust the process of becoming even when it is uncomfortable or unclear. We are affirming that growth can occur in the dark, that clarity can emerge from confusion, and that strength can be forged through challenge. This trust does not eliminate difficulty, but it transforms our relationship with it. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" we begin to wonder, "What might this be preparing me for?" Such questions open space for wisdom to enter. While optimism may feel natural during times of ease, its true spiritual power emerges in moments of struggle. Choosing optimism when life is already going well requires little effort. Choosing it when things are uncertain, painful, or disappointing is an act of courage. It becomes a discipline. Like meditation or prayer, optimism can be practiced. It involves noticing when the mind gravitates toward catastrophic interpretations and gently redirecting it toward possibility. It involves acknowledging fear without allowing it to define the narrative. For example, when plans collapse, we can ask what flexibility this invites. When relationships end, we can explore what independence or self-discovery might emerge. When opportunities close, we can remain open to those we cannot yet see. This does not mean forcing positivity or suppressing grief. Spiritual optimism honors emotion. It allows sadness, anger, and confusion to exist, but it refuses to let those emotions become permanent conclusions. Instead, it whispers, "This too can be part of your becoming." The present moment as the ground of optimism. You have explored deeply the spiritual truth that the present moment is all we truly have. Optimism lives here, not in imagined futures or rewritten pasts, but in the way we inhabit the now. In each moment we decide, will I meet this with tension or openness, with resistance or curiosity, with despair or trust? Optimism is a decision to meet the present without assuming it will betray us. It is a willingness to engage with what is happening rather than retreat into anticipatory fear. When we remain present, we often discover that many of our anxieties exist only as projections. The moment itself may contain challenge, but it also contains resources, breath, awareness, support that help us respond. Choosing optimism in the present moment means allowing life to unfold before concluding what it will mean. Interestingly, optimism is not only beneficial for ourselves, it enhances our capacity for compassion toward others. When we are pessimistic, we may become defensive, judgmental, or withdrawn. We may interpret others' actions through suspicion or assume negative intentions. This creates distance and misunderstanding. Optimism softens these assumptions. It allows us to believe that people can grow, that conflicts can be resolved, and that kindness can make a difference. It encourages patience where pessimism might provoke resentment. Spiritually, this aligns with the understanding that all beings are in process, evolving, learning, and navigating their own uncertainties. To choose optimism is to hold space for this process, both within ourselves and in others. Ultimately, the invitation to choose optimism is an invitation to participate in your own spiritual development. It is not about denying hardship or insisting on constant happiness. It is about recognizing that your inner stance influences your experience of life. When you choose optimism, you expand your perception, you increase your resilience, you become more receptive to insight and opportunity, you align with trust rather than fear, and yes, it feels better. Not because everything becomes easy, but because you are no longer carrying the additional burden of assuming that difficulty is meaningless or permanent. You begin to move through life with a quiet assurance that even in uncertainty, something worthwhile may emerge. In the end, choosing optimism is a sacred preference. It is a decision to lean toward hope, even when certainty is unavailable. It is a willingness to interpret life as a journey rather than a trap, as a teacher rather than an adversary. You may not control what happens, but you can influence how it shapes you. By choosing optimism, you are not escaping reality. You are engaging with it in a way that honors possibility. You are allowing life to surprise you, to guide you, to unfold in ways you could not predict. And in doing so, you discover that the choice itself becomes transformative. Because sometimes the most spiritual act is not to understand everything, but simply to believe that understanding will come. So choose to be optimistic. It feels better, and it opens the door to becoming who you are meant to be.